Oh, what violence have we shown towards Betty?
You're keeping her here against her will. Don't you call that violence?
No, I don't. And frankly, I don't think that she would agree either. She's a very sensible, intelligent girl who knows that she's done wrong and is quite determined never to do the same again. All she wants is to finish her sentence as quickly and as quietly as possible.
You've really brainwashed her, haven't you? I suppose you're going to tell me now that she's so overwhelmed by guilt that she actually welcomes being punished.
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because she puzzled me a great deal by asking me to take away her privileges. And do you know why that was, Mrs. Yardley? She thought that you were one of them.
What, do you mean my visits?
Yes, she thought that if she lost her privileges, she'd lose you as well. So I had a little private chat to her, and she told me in the nicest possible way that you were driving her absolutely potty. So you do understand, Mrs. Yardley, why it's probably better that you don't see her again? We don't want the whole of the prison wrecked, do we?
I gave that girl all my sympathy.
It's strange, you know. Sometimes one can give too much.
Thank you, sir. Can I help you?
I'm looking for some Polish flower vases in the shape of hands.
China and glass, madam, on the third floor.
No, I've already been up there. They've never heard of them.
Then I'm afraid I can't help you, can I?
They were advertised in the evening papers, just arrived from Poland.
Not this department.
You know, this shop really has gone down the drain. What's the matter? Has it been taken over by Americans or something?
Surely it's Mrs. Yardley, isn't it? I'm Cecily Foyle. Didn't I meet you with your husband at the Grangers?
Oh, yes. I didn't realize you worked here.
We had the most interesting talk about your prison work. Are you still going to Stone Park?
Well, no, I'm afraid I simply haven't got the time.
Oh, that's a shame. Still, you certainly started something that evening. You made it sound so fascinating that I decided to have a go myself.
How are you getting on with Mrs. Boswell?
Faye? Oh, I've known Faye for years and years. We were at university together.
Oh, really?
Look, I must show you something. The girl I visit is called Linda Silvers, and she really is quite a discovery. Now, you'd think that that was French crystal, wouldn't you?
Yes.
It's not. That's plastic.
Well, these are from Stone Park.
They've got a whole workshop making them, quite an assembly line. It's pretty.
It's expensive.
Well, yes, but after all, each one is different. And if you make things too cheap, people always think there's a snag.
Yes. I was actually looking for some Polish flower vases in the shape of hands.
Oh, those. They're for sale next week. Not actually very nice.
All the same, I think I'll come back and have a look.
Well, if you're not too busy, perhaps we might meet again at Stone Park.
I should think it highly unlikely, as long as your friend Mrs. Boswell is there. Goodbye.
Oh, apart from his being a trade union official, I'm afraid I don't know much about this man Phipps.
Well, I did consult you, and you said you thought it would be all right.
Well, at least we went through all the proper channels. He's probably only trying it on. There was a good deal of righteous indignation on the phone. Anyway, he's on his way up.
I wonder what he's like.
Oh, do you want me to stick around?
Well, that depends. If he's 65 in a blue serge suit and big boots, you can stay and do your Bluff North Country bit.
And if he's 35, and a dynamic young radical from the Welsh valleys,
We'll see.
I'll fetch him in. Oh, Mr. Phipps. Oh, Mrs. Boswell will see you now.
Ah, do sit down, Mr. Phipps. You know our Deputy Governor, Charles Radley?
Oh, Mr. Radley?
We spoke on the phone. Will you be wanting me to stay, Mrs. Boswell?
No, I think that's all. Thank you, Mr. Radley. Now, what can I do for you, Mr. Phipps?
Yes, well, I won't waste your time with a lot of flannel, Mrs. Boswell. It's come to the attention of my union that a certain amount of light industrial work is being undertaken at Stone Park without prior consultation.
What kind of work is that?
I'm referring to the paperweights. I see you've got a sample on your desk. I don't think there's much argument that those come within the orbit of Afghano.
Afghano?
Association of Fancy Goods and Novelties Operatives. We're not a large organisation, but we like to think we look after our members.
And you think we're giving you some undue competition, is that right?
Put it this way, Mrs. Boswell. How much do you pay your workers?
On those, the paperweights are between 35 and 40 pence a week.
A week? Well, I don't mind telling you I'm flabbergasted.
Yes, most people are.
35 pence. Dear, dear.
On the other hand, you must remember that they do get their board and lodging.
In a manner of speaking.
And according to the latest figures, that amounts to between 35 and 40 pounds a week.
I don't think they'd take that into consideration.
Well, I only mentioned it so that you could see why we have to be so stingy.
Look, my only concern is seeing my members aren't put out of work. You may not know, but there's a bit of a recession in the fancy goods sector right now. There's too much foreign competition, decrease in demand. Only a couple of months ago, one of the biggest factories in London went out of business. 150 women out of work. It's my job to see it doesn't get any worse.
I wonder if you have any idea of the kind of work that's been possible in this prison up until now, Mr. Phipps.
Look, half a dozen means 6, Sheila.
I put 6 in there, Mrs. Armitage.
Yeah, but look, you've got 7.
I did.
Yeah, but I
I
can't count.
This is Mr. Phipps, who's come to see the kind of work we do.
Oh, yes.
What's going on here, for instance?
Well, there's been a bit of a mix-up over the pencil boxes, but it seems to be all right now. Thank you, Miss Flaxton. Right now.
Yeah, I like one of those.
They make these.
No, they count them. We buy them by the gross, and they pack them in half dozens.
That's all.
Well, that's all we're allowed to do. If we started making pencil boxes, we'd probably be in trouble with the unions before we could turn round.
Is that so?
Mr. Phipps is a trades union official.
Don't let that bother you. I'd like to hear your views.
Well, personally, I think this is almost as bad as sewing mail bags. Well, it's not the kind of work you could take any interest in, is it?
Why should they have interesting work, Mrs. Armitage? They've come here to be punished, haven't
No,
they?
they've come here as punishment. That's quite different.
What union did you say you were?
Fancy goods and novelties.
My father was a union man. He was an area organiser for the textile workers during the Depression. Yeah, us kids were all brought up to believe in the trade union movement. He had us all out on May Day marching along behind the banners. Of course, he wasn't right about everything, my dad. But he always used to say that dull, repetitive work had a brutalising effect on the people who were doing it.
Of course.
Yes, well, you see, a good many of the girls who come here are brutalised already. A lot of them have never worked before in their lives. Well, they've never wanted to, because it was easier to steal. So how do you think it helps them to become better citizens, sitting here doing this all day? Or packing shoe brushes into plastic bags, or sewing overalls? Now, you find your work rewarding, Mr. Phipps, and so do I. But how are we going to get that message across to them?
The dignity of labour, eh?
That's what my old father would have said.
Oh, God, it's back, it weighs a ton. Like a slapping up and down with this stuff. Here, El, you take it. I can't carry it any further. Oh, hey, what's all them silvery things?
Yeah. Honesty.